Imagine this. You wake up not to the familiar hum of morning, but to an absolute echoing silence. No light, no sound, just a vast, formless awareness. You try to move, to speak, but there is no body, no tongue, just you, a pure consciousness adrift in an infinite, unknowable expanse. The last flicker of your earthly memory, a heartbeat, a breath, then nothing, replays like a broken film reel, a haunting echo of a life now irretrievably lost. You remember the faces of those you loved, the textures of familiar objects, the weight of your own existence, now a phantom sensation. But where are you? What is this place? Is it a place at all? Is it nothingness? Or something else? You reach out, not with a physical hand, but with the raw intent of your being, seeking a boundary, a sign, anything to anchor you in this bewildering void. But there is only more of the same, an endless, featureless expanse that seems to swallow your very self. This is the question that has haunted humanity since the first spark of self-awareness ignited in the human mind, the question of what lies beyond the veil of mortality. We build monuments to the dead, write elegies, and spin elaborate tales of afterlife, all in a desperate attempt to stave off the chilling uncertainty. But beneath the rituals and the doctrines, a raw, primal fear persists, a fear that whispers of an absolute, irreversible end. We tell ourselves stories of heaven and hell, of reincarnation and transcendence. But are these stories anything more than comforting fictions, desperate attempts to impose order on the ultimate chaos? Is there a soul, an essence, that survives the collapse of the physical form? Or are we merely complex biological machines, destined to flicker and fade into the vast, indifferent darkness of oblivion? Consider the paradox. We are beings of immense curiosity, driven to explore the furthest reaches of the cosmos, to dissect the very fabric of reality. Yet the most profound mystery of all remains stubbornly, terrifyingly beyond our grasp. We can map the human genome, split the atom, and peer into the birth of stars, but we cannot pierce the veil that separates life from whatever lies beyond. We cling to the belief in an afterlife, not as a matter of logic, but as a matter of survival. The thought of ceasing to exist, of being utterly and irrevocably extinguished, is a wound to the very core of our being, a wound that threatens to unravel the fragile tapestry of our sanity. We build our lives on the unspoken assumption of continuity, of a future that extends beyond the horizon of our own mortality. Without it, life becomes a meaningless dance, a fleeting illusion in the face of an inevitable, crushing nothingness. And so, we find ourselves suspended in this agonizing limbo, caught between the yearning for immortality and the chilling possibility of annihilation. We seek answers in science, in philosophy, in religion, but the more we search, the more elusive the truth becomes. The evidence is contradictory, the interpretations are subjective, and the ultimate question remains stubbornly, hauntingly unanswered. What if the very nature of our perception, the very structure of our consciousness, prevents us from grasping the true nature of what lies beyond? What if the answers we seek are not hidden in some distant realm, but woven into the fabric of our own being, waiting to be discovered, not through logic or reason, but through a radical shift in perspective? The journey ahead will take us into the deepest recesses of the human psyche, into the uncharted territories of consciousness, and into the heart of the great, unsettling question that has haunted humanity since the dawn of time. But be warned, the answers we seek may not be the ones we expect. The truth, when it finally reveals itself, may be more terrifying, more beautiful, and more profoundly unsettling than anything we could possibly imagine. And it will begin by understanding the hidden problem that keeps us from seeing what is truly there. The hidden problem lies in our fundamental misunderstanding of consciousness itself. We treat it as a product of the brain, a mere epiphenomenon of neural activity, a fleeting spark that vanishes when the machine shuts down. This materialist worldview, deeply ingrained in modern science, dictates that consciousness is localized, confined within the skull, dependent on the physical substrate of the brain. But what if this assumption is fundamentally flawed? Consider the insights of Carl Jung, who explored the vast, uncharted territories of the collective unconscious. He posited that our individual consciousness is merely a ripple on the surface of a much deeper, universal ocean of awareness, a realm of archetypes and symbols that transcends the limitations of space and time. Could this collective unconscious be the very fabric of what we perceive as afterlife? Could it be the repository of all human experience, a cosmic memory bank that persists beyond the individual? Nietzsche, with his relentless critique of conventional morality and metaphysics, dared to question the very foundations of our belief in a separate, enduring self. He saw the ego as a fragile construct, a fleeting illusion that masks the underlying chaos of existence. What if death is not the extinction of consciousness, but the dissolution of this illusory ego, emerging back into the undifferentiated unity of being? Schopenhauer, in his treatise on the world as will and representation, argued that the true essence of reality is not material, but a blind, striving force he called will. This will, he claimed, is the underlying energy that drives all existence, the very life force that animates the universe. Could this will be the substrate of consciousness, the eternal energy that persists beyond the decay of the physical form? Our addiction to linear time, to the notion of cause and effect, further blinds us to the possibility of an afterlife. We are trapped in a temporal cage, unable to conceive of a reality that transcends the limitations of our sensory experience. As Aldous Huxley explored in his writings, our brains may act as reducing valves, filtering out vast realms of perception that lie beyond our ordinary awareness. Death, then, might be the moment when these valves open, when we are flooded with the full spectrum of reality. Sartre's existentialism forces us to confront the absurdity of our existence, the stark reality of our mortality. He argued that we are condemned to be free, burdened with the responsibility of creating meaning in a meaningless universe. But what if this freedom extends beyond the confines of our physical existence? What if death is not the end of freedom, but its ultimate expression, a liberation from the constraints of the body and the limitations of the ego? Viktor Frankl, who survived the horrors of Auschwitz, discovered that even in the face of unimaginable suffering, the human spirit can find meaning. He recognized the power of the human capacity to transcend circumstances, to find purpose beyond the immediate reality. Could this transcendent capacity be the key to understanding the nature of consciousness, the bridge between life and whatever lies beyond? The problem, then, is not the absence of evidence, but our inability to see beyond the limitations of our current worldview. We are trapped in a materialist paradigm, blind to the possibility of a consciousness that transcends the physical. And until we break free from this intellectual prison, the question of life after death will remain shrouded in mystery. The unseen consequences of our flawed understanding of consciousness permeate every aspect of our lives, shaping our fears, our desires, and our very sense of identity. The fear of death, amplified by our belief in its finality, casts a long shadow over our existence, fueling our anxieties and driving our desperate attempts to cling to life. This fear manifests in our obsession with material possessions, our relentless pursuit of status and power, our desperate attempts to leave a legacy that will outlive our mortal bodies. We build empires, write books, and create art, all in a futile attempt to cheat death, to carve our names into the stone of eternity. Our denial of death also distorts our relationships, fostering a sense of isolation and disconnection. We treat others as objects, as means to an end, rather than as fellow travelers on the same perilous journey. We build walls around ourselves, afraid to open our hearts, to expose our vulnerability, lest we be reminded of our own mortality. The illusion of a separate self, reinforced by our materialist worldview, breeds a sense of alienation from the natural world. We see ourselves as masters of the universe, entitled to exploit and dominate the planet, oblivious to the interconnectedness of all living things. This arrogance, this delusion of separateness, is driving us towards ecological catastrophe, a self-inflicted apocalypse that threatens to extinguish all life on Earth. Our cognitive biases, our ingrained patterns of thought, further reinforce our denial of death. We cling to comforting narratives, to wishful thinking, to magical beliefs, anything to stave off the chilling reality of our mortality. We surround ourselves with distractions, with noise and activity, anything to avoid the unsettling silence of our own inner being. Neurologically, the brain is wired for survival, programmed to avoid pain and seek pleasure. This survival instinct, amplified by our fear of death, drives us to seek out experiences that provide temporary relief from our existential angst. We become addicted to sensation, to stimulation, to the fleeting highs of dopamine, anything to numb the pain of our mortality. Culturally, we have created a death-denying society, a culture that celebrates youth, beauty, and vitality, while shunning old age, decay, and death. We hide our dead, embalm our bodies, and sanitize our graveyards, anything to avoid confronting the raw, visceral reality of our mortality. This denial, this avoidance, this relentless flight from death ultimately robs us of the very essence of life. We live in fear, in anxiety, in a constant state of unease, unable to fully embrace the present moment, to savor the fleeting beauty of existence. We are like ghosts, haunting our own lives, forever trapped in the shadow of our mortality. The unseen consequence, then, is not simply the fear of death, but the death of life itself. We are living half-lives, trapped in a cage of our own making, unable to experience the full spectrum of human existence. And until we break free from this cage, until we confront our mortality with courage and honesty, we will remain forever imprisoned by our own fear. We must learn to embrace our mortality, to confront our fear of death with courage and honesty. Instead of running from death, we must learn to dance with it, to see it not as an enemy, but as a natural and inevitable part of the cycle of life. By accepting our mortality, we liberate ourselves from the shackles of fear and open ourselves to the full, vibrant experience of being alive. We must reclaim our connection to the natural world, to recognize our interconnectedness with all living things. We must learn to see ourselves not as masters of the universe, but as humble participants in the grand symphony of existence. We must tread lightly on the earth, respecting its delicate balance and honoring the sacredness of all life. We must cultivate compassion, both for ourselves and for others. We must learn to see beyond the surface appearances, to recognize the shared humanity that unites us all. We must extend our hearts to those who suffer, to those who are lost, to those who are afraid, for in their pain, we see a reflection of our own. We must challenge the illusion of a separate self, to recognize the interconnectedness of all consciousness. We must learn to see ourselves not as isolated individuals, but as ripples in the vast ocean of being. We must cultivate a sense of unity, a sense of belonging, a sense of oneness with the universe. We must break free from the tyranny of linear time, to embrace the timelessness of the present moment. We must learn to live in the now, to savor the fleeting beauty of each breath, each heartbeat, each sensation. We must recognize that the past is a memory, the future is a dream, and the only reality is the present. We must challenge the dogma of materialism, to open ourselves to the possibility of a consciousness that transcends the physical. We must explore the mysteries of consciousness with courage and curiosity, daring to venture into the uncharted territories of the mind. We must listen to the whispers of our intuition, to the silent language of our hearts, to the deep wisdom that resides within us all. We must embrace the paradox of existence, to recognize that life and death are not opposites, but two sides of the same coin. We must learn to see death not as an end, but as a transition, a transformation, a return to the source. We must learn to see life not as a linear progression, but as a cyclical dance, a continuous unfolding of being. By embracing these radical shifts in perspective, by challenging the fundamental assumptions of our worldview, we can break free from the prison of our own making. We can reclaim our freedom, our joy, our sense of wonder. We can rediscover the true meaning of life, not as a fleeting illusion, but as an eternal dance of consciousness. The ultimate truth, the deepest revelation, is that death is not the end of consciousness, but its transformation. It is the shedding of the physical body, the release of the ego, the merging back into the vast, undifferentiated ocean of being. It is the return to the source, the homecoming of the soul. Consciousness, as it turns out, is not a product of the brain, but a fundamental property of the universe, a field of awareness that permeates all existence. Our individual consciousness is merely a localized expression of this universal field, a ripple on the surface of the infinite ocean. Death, then, is not the extinction of this consciousness, but its liberation from the constraints of the physical form. It is the moment when the ripple merges back into the ocean, when the individual returns to the universal. It is the ultimate act of surrender, the final release of control. The afterlife, therefore, is not a distant realm, a separate dimension, but the very fabric of reality itself. It is the ground of being, the source of all consciousness, the infinite potential from which all things arise. It is the timeless, spaceless, eternal now. We are not separate from this reality, but an integral part of it. We are not isolated individuals, but interconnected expressions of the same universal consciousness. We are not merely physical beings, but eternal souls, temporarily inhabiting a mortal form. The fear of death, then, is not a fear of extinction, but a fear of the unknown. It is the fear of letting go, of surrendering control, of trusting in the infinite wisdom of the universe. But when we release this fear, when we embrace the mystery of death, we discover the true meaning of life. We realize that life is not a linear journey towards an end, but a cyclical dance of creation and destruction, of birth and death, of form and formlessness. We realize that death is not the opposite of life, but its complement, its partner, its essential ingredient. We understand that we are not merely temporary beings, destined to vanish into the void, but eternal souls, forever dancing in the cosmic ballet. We see that our lives, our experiences, our relationships are not meaningless fragments, but precious threads in the grand tapestry of existence. And in that moment, when we fully embrace the truth of our eternal nature, the fear of death dissolves, replaced by a profound sense of peace, a deep sense of belonging, a radiant sense of love. We realize that we are not alone, that we are never truly separate, that we are forever connected to the source of all being. And so, we dance, we live, we love, we surrender, knowing that death is not the end, but the beginning, the homecoming, the ultimate reunion. We are eternal, we are infinite, we are one. And in that realization, we find the true meaning of life and the ultimate answer to the great question,